31 days until the NFL kicks off. So 31 days until fantasy football managers finally get what we've been waiting for all offseason. And here at IDP Plus, we've been going around the NFL and looking at all the NFL teams one by one through a fantasy focused lens. Today we have the Green Bay Packers, so sit tight. In just a second, we're going to get into all things fantasy, offense, defense, coaching, line changes, and fallout. Sit tight. We're going to get into it in just a sec. Welcome back to the IDP Plus channel. I'm your host, as always, on this portion of the channel anyways, and my name is Axton Harding. You can find me on Twitter or X at AxmanIDP. I always like to throw out some comments, thoughts, and analysis that I just kind of happen upon or just happen to be doing at the time, and feel free to lend your thoughts as well over there, or follow me, and I'd share all my content as well. So today we're getting into the continuance of my team fantasy focus preview series, where we're just looking at all of the NFL teams, all 32 teams, or as many as I can possibly get through between now and week one, through the lens of fantasy football. So we're going to take a look at all the changes, fallouts, what we can kind of expect, and kind of how I see the landscape for the Green Bay Packers this year. So to start it off the top, we're going to go ahead and talk about coaching changes, offensive line, then we'll get into kind of player values and things like that. So in terms of coaching changes, we don't have anything that's really different. We've got Matt LaFleur at head coach, Adam Stunovich at offensive coordinator, and then on the defensive side of the ball, Jeff Hafley is kind of manning the defensive side of the ball there. So nothing's really changing there. We can kind of expect a pretty ho-hum deployment for offense and defense. Just kind of a summary of how the defense, Matt LaFleur or Jeff Hafley likes to run his defense. He really runs only one interior defensive lineman at over 40% of snaps. That's Kenny Clark at 62. He only runs one full-time defensive end, over 50% of snaps, and that's Rashawn Gary at 58%. We see one full-time linebacker, Corey Walker right now, one full-time corner, two full-time safeties. So they have a lot of rotation in Green Bay on the defensive side of the ball. There's just not a whole lot of value to extract. It's more consolidated. Let's just say that it's pretty concentrated in terms of IDP values over there. But we'll get into that in just a second. So enough on the coaching changes. We kind of know what we're kind of looking at here in terms of deployment. So let's talk offensive line. Green Bay Packers bring in Aaron Banks from San Francisco over the offseason, a 65 graded PFF overall offensive lineman. Just kind of adding some depth there, and I think they lost their center this offseason, so they're kind of doing a little shifting here, but more or less this entire offensive line is pretty well the same outside of the center, where they moved the guard in Elgton Jenkins over from left guard to center this year. Then they will bring in Aaron Banks here at the guard position. They also drafted a guy in Anthony Belton in the second round. It was actually a pretty good pass blocker there, and Aaron Banks kind of more specializes in run blocking. He's kind of excels in that sense there. So they've just kind of rounded out their offensive line with these additions, and I kind of think we can expect a lot of the same for 2025. Last year, a season ago, they kind of already displayed that they had a top 10 overall offensive line, which is pretty encouraging for the offensive side of the ball and fantasy players as a result. So just kind of briefly summarizing their performance last year, this team was top 5 in pass blocking and top 10 in run blocking. And they were kind of, they were top 12 in 2024 in passing yards per game, top 5 in total offense at 371 yards per game. Also top 5 in rush attempts. So this team's very efficient, very effective, and we're going to have quite a few pieces here to kind of talk about. So let's jump into the actual depth charts and just kind of take a look. We're going to start at quarterback, running back, tight end, or wide receiver, tight end, and then we'll get into the defensive side of the ball. So if we're talking about Jordan Love, a guy who I think is actually going pretty late in drafts. In all honesty, the quarterback landscape this year is pretty pretty different than what we've seen in the past. Normally, even in super flex leagues, you can guarantee pretty well the first 15 quarterbacks off the board in the first couple rounds. And now, after a quarterback like 6 or 7, you can get guys like Jordan Love in like the eighth, not the 8th round, excuse me, more like the 4th, 5th, 6th round. You can get him at a really good value, even probably later. I'm in a couple of best ball drafts, which not managed fantasy leagues, but he's fallen down to like 7th round, 6th, 7th round. As a quarterback 2, if you grab another quarterback early in a superflex league, this is an outstanding quarterback 2. If we just want to take a look at some stats in the past, just kind of see what Jordan Love is capable of, top 5 upside. You see it right there. Over 4,000 yards, over 30 touchdowns, only 11 picks in each of the last couple of seasons. And he's even displayed a little bit of a rushing upside, where a couple of years ago we saw him take 50 rushes on the ground for 250 yards and 4 touchdowns. So he's got that ability, but we're not really banking on the rushing upside with Jordan Love. He's just got a lot of good pass catchers on his team, and he's got a lot of options to choose from. Again, top 5 upside as a quarterback overall. So right now he's being valued in the middle rounds. Actually, let's even go in. This would be a great time to even show you guys our ADP tool. If we go into the website, redraft. This is redraft only ADP right now, but go ahead and check out the website, and you can take a look as well. And we're going to go quarterback. Oh, it's all IDP. Sorry, excuse me. Getting a little ahead of myself there, but anyways, we can stop. We can go back to Sleeper and just kind of take a look at it here. Either way, I've seen it. I've been drafting all offseason. I know he's going as a back-end quarterback too, more like the QB 18 to 20. In all honesty, right around there, there's a whole bunch of guys that could finish in the top 10 or top 12 and be a quarterback 1 for your team. Jordan Love, I wouldn't approach him with a quarterback 1 mindset. If you did do that in 1 quarterback leagues, I would definitely get some insurance, a Matt Stafford later, or somebody who's going to kind of give you some floor play in case Jordan Love doesn't hit the ceiling. But I'm confident this season in Jordan Love to pick up from a year ago, where 2023 over 4,000 yards. Last year he almost dropped 1,000 yards overall. He was injured much of the season. If you go back and look, he was it seemed like the team was catering to the injury that Jordan Love was kind of dealing with all offseason. You saw them really ramp up the running game, and Josh Jacobs reaped the benefits as a result. So they just kind of took a notch down in terms of passing overall, where they passed for 125 or 155 less passes overall in 2024 than 2023. I'm not going to say that we're going to get up to 579 pass attempts like we were in 2023, but we should definitely be closer to that than the numbers we saw last year. So I think the Green Bay Packers, especially adding Marcus Golden to this team, adds just even more firepower for Jordan Love. He can almost throw it up, and he's going to have 5 first round, second round draft picks to be able to go grab the ball out of the air there. So I think Jordan Love is in a prime position, especially having the running game so established with Josh Jacobs coming out of the backfield to set the tone in any given week. I think Jordan Love is going to have some outstanding upside this season. And so I think we could see Jordan Love pretty easily in a good situation. Everything goes right. Everybody's healthy, full season. We could pretty well see Jordan Love jump into top 10 quarterback potential. He's definitely got the upside, but the top 5 finish, I think Jordan Love is a steal in your drafts this season. There's not a whole lot in terms of the receiving room that I really want to bank on for the Green Bay Packers, but I think Jordan Love and Josh Jacobs, no less, are a couple of guys that we can really feel confident about this season, and Jordan Love is an incredible value. So we'll jump back over to the depth chart. Behind Jordan Love, we've got Malik Willis again. Of course, he's retained from a season ago. He's actually a pretty good starter in replacement of Jordan Love there for a few games. Surprisingly enough, he actually performed pretty well. That rushing upside really helped him. So in dynasty leagues, more like a stash, not really anybody I'm looking to go out and draft for season-long leagues. But break glass in case of emergency. I think that you could probably do pretty well better than Malik Willis for a backup quarterback. So just break glass in case of emergency if there's nothing else on the wire and you're in pretty deep leagues. But not really gonna spotlight him here. So let's jump into the running back room. We've got Josh Jacobs, Emmanuel Wilson, Marshawn Lloyd, Chris Brooks. It was pretty much Josh Jacobs' show last year. We get into some of his stats here. He carried right on from Vegas to Green Bay, showed that upside, and just hit the ground running over in Green Bay. So let's take a look comparatively here, where we've seen Josh Jacobs have, what, 4 RB1 seasons in the last 5. The only time he didn't reach it, he missed a handful of games in 2023. We've seen him amass 10 plus touchdowns in 3 seasons. The guy can handle a hefty workload, 300 touches or more in 2 seasons out of the 6 he's been in the NFL. A guy who gets worked in the passing game too. So we've seen Josh Jacobs finish as top 5, top 3, top 10, top 12. Josh Jacobs is going to get a lot of work in this offense, and it's going to continue to run. He's going to be the guy who continues to set the tone on a week-to-week basis and allow the passing game to kind of be just a lot more flexible, because teams aren't really going to shut down Josh Jacobs behind the kind of offensive line that he runs behind. So he's going to continue to do his thing. I think Josh Jacobs going in kind of the second round, pretty generally in 1 quarterback, even 2 super flex leagues. So he's going to cost you a pretty penny. But outside of like Christian McCaffrey, Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, guys like that, Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, behind those guys, he is an outstanding kind of bottom of that tier, I would say, before things kind of fall off and you kind of take a step down in terms of overall volume running backs. Josh Jacobs actually has the numbers that are competing with these guys up at the top. So in all honesty, if you don't get young Bijan, a young Jahmyr Gibbs, Saquon's, I think we can feel pretty happy about getting Josh Jacobs in the later second rounds, maybe even the third rounds in super flex leagues. I'm in one best ball right now in the third round. He's coming up on me. I'm eyeballing him hardcore for my next draft pick. So definitely love the outlook for Josh Jacobs this season. Probably going more as a back end RB1 with top 5 RB upside. So maybe there's not an incredible value to be extracted here, but definitely a guy who I think is going to get the kind of volume and workload to be able to pretty confidently put up the kind of numbers that he has the last several seasons. So I think he's somebody we can pretty well rely on to at least finish right around where he's being drafted. Beyond him, it kind of gets a little bit more murky and kind of uncertain, I guess, as to the kind of prowess and performance history we've seen from guys in that kind of range, where they're more like recent pops. Josh Jacobs has been around, so I think he's going to continue to be an RB1 this season. Now, if we want to talk about pass catchers, let's get into the wide receiver room. This team is loaded with pass catchers. We've got 4th round pick Romeo Doubs, 1st round pick Matthew Golden. I said Marcus earlier. Excuse me. Matthew Golden. We've got 2nd round pick Jaden Reed, 5th round pick Dontavian Wicks, 2nd round pick Christian Watson. They even drafted Savion Williams this year, who I thought was a running back, doubling kind of as a wide receiver kind of extension type. I think he converted. Anyways, I'm not really all that excited about any of these guys having some consistent upside for your fantasy football teams in season-long leagues. Frankly, you can take shots in dynasty leagues. The guys that I've got a little bit of Romeo Doubs just because he was on the waivers. I haven't been able to invest in Jaden Reed because most of the guys who have him invested pretty good capital into him. And I don't think that they're really willing to move off for the kind of price that you're going to be willing to pay to get a guy like Jaden Reed. But no less, definitely all these guys are pretty well falling down the draft boards because nobody knows what to do in terms of season-long leagues. So if you're going to take a shot late on some guys like I think if you need kind of a backup guy with high upside, I like Dontavian Wicks. He's a guy who could pretty well go out and get a couple of touchdowns. Romeo Doubs is probably a guy that will end up on waivers you can pick up at any point during the season. I'm not too excited about a Matthew Golden, Jaden Reed. A lot of these guys are boom-bust types because there's just so many good pass catchers in this room, and Jordan Love's a great quarterback who's going to spread the ball pretty evenly. They don't even all play full-time snaps either, so it's just pretty well like pick your poison, and Jordan Love has all the options. That's why I like Jordan Love here, because Jordan Love isn't the one I'm worried about. He's going to have all these guys to pass to, but the wide receivers trying to pin them down week to week is going to be nearly impossible. You're just going to have to kind of bank on just teams' weaknesses and just kind of the team that when they're playing defenses with weak secondaries, I think that's going to be when we want to maybe play more of our Green Bay Packers guys. But in all honesty, I'm not really, even at that point, it's who's going to go off. They've got 6 good playmakers who could go off for a touchdown and 100 yards on any given week. They've all put it on paper. So like I said, it's kind of a murky situation at receiver. None of these guys are going to, I think Matthew Golden is going to be the guy that probably goes highest, and maybe he's got the highest upside. But again, all these guys have the experience over Matthew Golden, and I think a first round draft pick who wasn't really known for much more than his speed. It's not like he was just a stellar route runner or a good hands ball catcher. Yes, he's got good hands, but didn't come into the NFL, didn't get drafted in the first round because of his hands. There were other guys making plays, doing Ted McMillan, Travis Hunter. There were plenty of guys who were a lot better performers. The only reason Matthew Golden went into the first round is because of his 40. So had he not had that 40, we don't know where he would have gone. And I'm not to say that he's not a great pass catcher. It's just temper expectations here. Just because he's a first round pick doesn't mean that he's going to be a guy that you're going to want to put in every week. So I think Matthew Golden, we want to temper expectations a little bit. This whole entire receiving room, outside of maybe Tucker Kraft, is going to be pretty unreliable. So that's just kind of my red flag warning here on the pass catchers in Green Bay. If you're going to take shots, feel free. Just don't pay high capital. In dynasty leagues, I've got kind of a little bit of stock in a few of these guys, but I'm not heavily investing in any of them. I'm not going out of my way to acquire any of them until we see some consistency. But with the passing game looking to go up this season, maybe you want to take a shot. I like Jaden Reed. He seemed to be his first season. He came out and really popped. He's kind of the only one that's really put a full season's worth of production on paper. So if you want to take a shot, maybe him, maybe the unknown and Matthew Golden, if you kind of have that kind of risk tolerance, which is not my flavor. So now let's talk more about the tight end room. Get more about pass catchers jumping into tight ends. Luke Musgrave, Tucker Kraft. Unfortunately, Luke Musgrave was the higher draft pick. Talented tight end, but when he just has had trouble staying on the field, and Tucker Kraft has come in and make the most of his situations. So Tucker Kraft, if we want to even look at some stats on some Tucker Kraft, 17 games last year, 700 yards, 50 catches, 7 touchdowns. I think he's a guy who this season, as Jordan Love kind of gets back into the offense and has kind of a more healthy season to kind of stand on here, I think Tucker Kraft could be a guy that he leans on. A lot of people are really high on Tucker Kraft this season as being kind of the only pass catcher who's going to be pretty consistently just right open in the middle of the field, where all the other playmakers are going to kind of be, again, a little more inconsistent, not going to be playing full-time snaps. Tucker Kraft's going to be on the field all the time. He's going to be one of the few guys who are on the field and aren't really going to be leaving. So I think that's where most of this kind of hype behind Tucker Kraft is coming from. So definitely a playmaker, 7 touchdowns last season. I think we could see more of the same this season, if not a little bit of an uptick for him. He was a top 10 tight end a year ago. I think we could see that creep up even because after like the top 3 tight ends, it's like everybody's pretty well the same. The difference in scoring is 20 points or so. Only a couple of points per game between that kind of group of tight ends. So any one of these guys could really jump up. And I think Tucker Kraft's in a good position here this year, where we expect the passing game to really ramp up with a healthy Jordan Love coming into 2025. So I like Tucker Kraft. He's actually going really late in drafts. If you miss out on any of the top 3, he's going to go way late. You can almost get him with one of your last few picks because he's going around even later than your David Njoku's. He's going probably more like tight end 15 to 20, and he's got top 10 upside with room for more, where we expect this passing game to ramp up to more of what we saw a couple of years ago. So I like some Tucker Kraft this season. You could probably get him pretty cheap in dynasty leagues. I think you would probably be looking at maybe a second-round pick or something like that for a guy like Tucker Kraft, who, if he puts up 2 top 10 seasons or even a top 5 season, you're already looking at a massive value jump. So you might be able to flip him for like a late first-round pick or something next year if things go right. And Tucker Kraft really kind of grabs onto that opportunity, and everybody stays healthy on this team. So I like Tucker Kraft to be kind of a value, a sneaky, maybe tight end 2 later on in your drafts, who could end up being a tight end 1 or even be a valuable piece later on in season-long leagues, where you can kind of trade him for other assets, more flex play or something like that, or even play him in your flex play, just kind of depending on the kind of production that we're seeing. So we'll just kind of stay patient here with the Green Bay Packers, but I think Tucker Kraft's going to be one of the few guys that we can kind of rely on to have a decent floor here for this season. So that's kind of going to wrap up the offensive side of the ball. And let's see here. Let's go back into some full screen. I just want to tell you guys a little bit about Bob Lung's consistency guide. So go to Amazon.com, look up 2025 consistency guide, fantasy football consistency guide. Get yours for $15. Bob Lung's put it out. This is the 10th year he's done it, and it just he approaches fantasy football through the lens of consistency. Just kind of a different approach to fantasy football, kind of give you a different kind of perspective and edge on the game that not a lot of people are looking at this way. ESPN, Yahoo, all your primary fantasy information providers are not going to look at consistency and drill down kind of at to this level. So go on Amazon.com, check out the 2025 Fantasy Football Consistency Guide. Get yours today, $15. All right, now let's come back into the depth chart. Let's get on some IDP. I mentioned earlier that we're only looking at one interior defensive lineman over 40% of snaps, Kenny Clark. He had 62%. We're not really looking at a whole lot of full-time snaps for the defensive line. Really, this team doesn't deploy a whole lot of full-time anything. They're a big rotation kind of team. So I mentioned again, we're also on the defensive line that the edges. There's only one edge that plays over 50% of snaps. That's Rashawn Gary at 58. I'm not really too excited about any of these guys unless you're in a super deep IDP league and you just need some depth. But if you're relying on Kenny Clark or Rashawn Gary, you are hurting. In my opinion, there's so many other guys with so much more upside and so much more opportunity that you could pick for your DL 5-6 on your bench. And I'm not really going out of my way. I dropped Rashawn Gary in a start 3 the other day, so I'm not really particularly too excited about any of these guys. None of them have flashed any kind of just wowing upside. Let's even get in here and look at Rashawn Gary's numbers the last few seasons, where 7.5 sacks. It's a okay upside for a guy that late, but again, it's going to be kind of pretty inconsistent, where he's pretty well going to fade much of the season. No points, 2 tackles, 3 tackles, 5 tackles and a sack. Okay, so week 7 you got something. 1 tackle the next week, half sack, 4 tackles, mediocre performance. Then he goes on a little run here with some sacks to kind of back up the end of the season. But when you're only playing 28 snaps, 37 snaps, or even if that's percentages, you're playing minimal snaps. There's not a lot of opportunity there. If he does hit home, he's not going to back it up with many tackles. He just doesn't have the kind of upside that you really want on your team. At this point, I think he is more or less clogging up your roster and taking up space for guys that could have a decent floor. But if you need a guy to fill your depth, depth at defensive line, I think you can find much better on the waiver wire. There's still a lot of guys who are getting some good opportunity that are probably sitting out there on the wire that can put up a better floor than Rashawn Gary. I wouldn't even want to throw Rashawn Gary out there at any point if I was desperate, unless it was just an absolutely plus matchup. And even still, I don't feel great about it. So, but he's definitely he's going to be the guy that gets the 62% of snaps here. Let's even go into the IDP Plus website and we'll look at the team snap tool. I'll show you guys kind of what I was seeing. Where we've seen here at defensive tackle, boom, look, Kenny Clark, 74% of snaps. He's the only guy over 50% for the entire season. Compared to Daryl Slayton at 39, 32 for Devontae Wyatt. We just don't have anybody playing significant snaps that's going to be getting any kind of production we want to see. And then Rashawn Gary at 62% is not even putting up the kind of numbers we want to see in a guy who's playing those kind of snaps. There's just too many guys out there that are going to be putting up more consistent numbers. Let's actually even look at Kenny Clark. Oh, here. Kenny Clark, we're going to look at some stats on Sleeper, just historically see what he's put up. He has 7.5 sack upside from 2023, but that was the best of his career. 6 sack upside, 1.5 sack upside. Again, if you're relying on Kenny Clark, much of the same as Rashawn Gary, where he's going to kind of leave you high and dry for more often than he's going to pop for you. So I'm not really excited about either one of these guys getting the full-time snaps on this defensive line. Even in your deeper leagues, there's nobody here on this defensive line that I'm particularly excited about. But if you need defensive tackle help, I would be looking elsewhere than Kenny Clark. There's just not going to be. He just hasn't flashed any kind of tackling upside or overall sack upside. It's just been pretty poor for much of his career. You're really just hoping that he can pop into that 7.5 sack season, and even still, you're looking at a pretty mediocre season. So if you're hurting for if you were relying on one of these Green Bay Packer defensive linemen, you are in a rough way. Hit me up. We can find some defensive linemen for your team that are going to put up better numbers than Kenny Clark and Rashawn Gary. Anyways, so let's get into some better parts of this team who are going to put up the kind of numbers that we do want to see for IDP. Let's talk about some linebackers. I know I said earlier the linebackers really only really deploy one full-time linebacker, and that's going to be Quay Walker because he's got the green dot. He's going to be out there calling the plays week in and week out. And I mentioned earlier in the offseason that Quay Walker, unfortunately, is going to be the guy who's going to get the shot to start the season. But this team did draft Adrian Cooper last year, and he really made an impact early in the season. So to me, I think he's knocking on Quay's door, and Quay's going to have a short leash, in my opinion, with the kind of attitude we've seen where he's just had himself booted out of a couple of games. We've also seen him kind of just have some attitude problems in practice. We've seen injuries. Quay Walker has trouble staying healthy as well, where we've also seen that Isaiah McDuffie comes in. He's pretty well had a good stretch of games that you can stream him in replacement of Quay Walker the last handful of seasons. So if you want to take a shot on Quay Walker, I wouldn't draft him any higher than maybe a linebacker 2. I mean, he's a full-time linebacker that I don't really even feel confident in my top 24 just because of the uncertainty. We haven't even hardly seen him. Let's actually just go look at Quay Walker and just see how many games he's played in his entire career, year in and year out. One full season. He's had 3 years in the NFL, one full season where he amassed 119 tackles. The year next year, he missed 3 games, still got the same amount of tackles. A pretty good producer overall, in all honesty. If we could see him get another full season, I think Quay Walker could pretty handily surpass 140 tackles in a perfect world. Quay Walker does have that kind of upside. He's a great player. We just want to see him kind of bring it all together, where he hasn't so far this season. So, or so far in his career, he hasn't had a complete season outside of his first year. So I think this season, should he be able to get his health underway and his attitude in check, we could be looking at a pretty good value here in Quay Walker. A lot of people aren't really particularly excited about him. He's going as more like in the back end LB2, LB3 type with the kind of upside where if things go right, 140 plus tackles, that's kind of knocking on LB1's door. He's going to be on the field a lot. Opportunity is going to be there. And at 118 tackle floor in partial seasons, kind of do the math there. I think if you extrapolate that, we don't like to extrapolate on smaller sample sizes, but we got a majority of a couple of seasons here to kind of go off of. Again, I think we could be looking at 130 tackles, 140 tackles if things go right. So there's some upside in Quay Walker. It's not a pretty one. You're kind of taking some risk, but it's kind of baked into his ADP. There could be some value there. So if you get an LB3 type and you take Quay Walker, I'd kind of turn around and take somebody else's insurance, maybe a Landon Roberts later, Divine Diablo, Cody Barton, somebody who's going to be on the field all season. We know their role is locked in, and they're probably going to get a bunch of tackles this season. Somebody who's going to have at least a decent floor. Those guys don't have quite the upside Quay Walker does, but definitely somebody who I would feel better about grabbing Quay Walker if I grabbed a couple extra linebackers there in the next few rounds. So definitely a good value in my opinion. I'm just not particularly excited if he doesn't ever fall to a point where I just feel good about getting him myself. But again, there's definitely value here. It's not like he's overvalued. It's not going to cost a whole lot to get him. And he does have some upside. It's just we haven't quite seen him put it all together so far. So a little hesitant on Quay Walker, but green dot opportunity, that's king. So we've definitely got to treat our IDPs who are going to be on the field with that kind of respect. Opportunity is his until he loses it. At that point, if he does lose it, then we're looking at a great season coming from Adrian Cooper. And I think Adrian Cooper was putting up the kind of numbers last season on a game-to-game basis when he was playing those kind of snaps that I think this team is going to want to put him out more. I think we might see this defensive coordinator, Jeff Hafley, put Adrian Cooper on the field more, where last year it was more him and McDuffie kind of rotating in and out. And here, let's even go back and look at snap shares. See there, Rashawn Gary, 58%. Nobody else above 40 on the edge room. Okay, so inside linebacker, Isaiah McDuffie actually played more snaps than Edgerrin Cooper last year. But once Edgerrin Cooper, later in the season, what about week 15, he kind of started getting a bunch of snaps. Week 16, he got 70%. And then from there, it was 90 plus. Actually, even week 17 and 18, it looks like they deployed 200% linebackers. So I think Edgerrin Cooper could probably jump right into a full-time role this season, even though it's something we haven't historically seen them play 2 full-time linebackers. But because last year Eric Wilson getting 51%, Isaiah McDuffie 64. I think that Edge Cooper is going to be jumping right up there to get full-time snaps. And I think by the end of the season, we could see him take over that green dot from Quay Walker. So I do love some Edgerrin Cooper this year. The only unfortunate thing is everybody else does too. So he goes pretty high in your fantasy football drafts. So if we take a look here, I can actually even show you guys. We'll go open up another page. So if we just look at the back half of last season when he was getting full snaps, 8 tackles, 10 tackles, 7 tackles on the last handful of games. And then his first game in week 15, what did he play? 70%, or no, it was like more like 50% of snaps. I'll go back here and take a look. Edge Cooper, 58% of snaps, had 5 tackles and a sack, and then they put him on the field full time the rest of the season, and he compiled 25 tackles in 3 games. That's pretty good floor for a linebacker too, with kind of some upside looking into 2025. Now let's get into these are just best ball leagues here, but I'll just kind of show you guys where Edge Cooper's going in drafts. Let's see. There might be actually some value here. Where's he at? Edge Cooper. Oh, round 4. Here, let's look here. My man Gary Van Dyke took Edge Cooper in the 4th round here as like the, I don't know, LB 14 or 15. So, they're not really a whole lot of value to extract for Edge Cooper. It's not like you're going to get him late and he's just going to pop on the scene. So you're going to have to pay a decent penny. But I think with a full season that Edge Cooper having gotten 77 tackles on partial snaps last season, we could be looking at a guy who could very well have 150 plus tackle upside if things go perfect. But we're just going to temper expectations. He doesn't have the dot. He's not going to be, we're more projecting that he's going to be that next full-time linebacker all season. But again, we've seen rotations before. Just not that he's not overvalued by any stretch. I think it's a good spot for him as kind of a middling LB2. He could creep up there to potential LB1 upside. But we're just going to have to see. Again, they've got Quay Walker with the green dot right now, so we might have to temper expectations early on. But I think Edge Cooper at this LB2 role, when we've seen 2 full-time linebackers on the field because of injury, Isaiah McDuffie's done pretty well. So a full season of Edge Cooper could be pretty nice. So he's not overvalued, not undervalued, not a particular steal or anything, but I do like him for this season. Isaiah McDuffie is a kind of LB 5-6 type who's going to play partial snaps, coming in replacement, give these guys a breather, but he's going to be putting up good numbers on the field as well. So let's actually even just look up Isaiah McDuffie. In replacement last season when he was getting, 9 tackles, 6 tackles, 9 tackles. I mean, the guy, even playing partial snaps, has like a 4 to 5 tackle floor. And I'll show you guys so you can see. 6, 4, 9, 6, 3. I mean, you expect kind of those low games. 10, 15 tackles. I mean, he's playing 62% of snaps. That's kind of ridiculous. So I'm not saying go out and get him for a guy you're going to put in your lineup, but as far as a depth piece later on, way late in the draft, definitely a guy who's going to be who can break glass in case of emergency, who's gotten some run and some full-time snaps in each of the last handful of seasons. So I like Isaiah McDuffie as kind of an emergency depth piece late in drafts, but there's not a whole lot outside of those guys. Wilson will come in relief as well, but not a particularly upside kind of player. So let's see here. Now let's jump into some defensive backs. Go ahead and go back to the our lad's website. This is what I use for depth charts, in case you guys haven't noticed. It's pretty good depth chart kind of website to just see how things are laid out for any given team. So go check out our lads if you need an update on the depth chart where guys are going to be lined up. So now we're getting into defensive backs. As I mentioned, there's one full-time corner. They like to rotate at corner, and then they got 2 full-time safeties. So we're looking at Nate Hobbs at left cornerback, Isaiah McKinney at strong safety, Evan Williams at free safety, Keyshawn Nixon at right corner, and Javon Bullard comes in, second-year player, drafted last year in the second round, comes in at nickelback. So usually the nickelback position is the one that's playing the most snaps around the line of scrimmage. He's kind of the guy that we like to see, or that we like to kind of target as defensive backs in our IDP leagues. We just haven't quite seen Javon Bullard, I don't think, put up any kind of numbers that we really want to rely on, but the opportunity might be there with a kind of a revamp of the defensive back room. 85 tackle floor for Javon Bullard is actually pretty decent, but not the kind of upside of a Brian Branch or any of those other premier nickel corners. So Nate Hobbs has been historically a pretty good producer overall in his days in Vegas. Let's go. We'll just kind of look here at his upside on Sleeper, where we've seen him have a nice 70-80 tackle floor. He's a guy who's going to get a lot of pass breakups, and he's got some pretty high upside week to week. Let's even go back 2023, 12 tackles. I mean, he's a guy who could eclipse 10 tackles on any given week. He's got a nice floor for cornerbacks, a guy who I loved streaming a couple years ago, but then last season he just couldn't beat the injury bug. So maybe with a full season, we can see him get back to the kind of production that we like to see for IDP. Otherwise, when he was playing 4 or 5 tackle floor, that's pretty nice for a defensive back. You only see one game where he fell off with 1 tackle and then kind of 2 tackles later on. But again, amidst all the injuries, I kind of expect that. So I do like Nate Hobbs. I'm not, again, with defensive backs, it's such a volatile position where the top end changes all the time. We really want to hone in on those top few guys who kind of more or less stay up there in terms of overall finishes. Nate Hobbs is actually a guy who was finishing pretty highly a couple of years ago among the cornerback position. He was a great streamer. So I think maybe there might be some opportunity. It's hard to say from team to team and the way teams are going to deploy their cornerbacks. Again, I think Keyshawn Nixon is going to be the guy who's going to be staying on the field much of the time if they play one full-time corner. Nate Hobbs might not be on the field all the time. So he may be splitting some snaps and only playing 40 to 50% of snaps, 60% of snaps as they rotate guys in. It's going to be kind of a wait and watch thing for Nate Hobbs. I'm not going to go out and try to acquire him or trade him or anything, but keep a pulse on the waiver wire and just see how things turn out. This Green Bay secondary is pretty good. They've got some talent here, so there might be some value we can extract here because none of these guys are really going to go too high except for Xavier McKinney. So let's talk about Xavier McKinney a little bit. I want to get into some of his stats because he's a guy who I've for the most part faded much of his career in Xavier McKinney because he was just kind of inconsistent in New York. He had some upside, but didn't really have a tackling floor. It was pretty just up and down. Green Bay, I think he's brought it all together and he's put up some pretty healthy floors for the last several seasons where we've seen him kind of set an 80 to 90, even 115 tackle kind of floor for him. So take a look, 2021, 90 tackles. Yes, I said early on it was inconsistent. We'll even go, I can dive in and look, but I'm already kind of pressed for time here. So we'll just kind of take a look at it from an overview standpoint. 93 tackles, 44 tackles, 116 tackles, 85 tackles. He's got a pretty good floor overall. And I think a year ago in 2024, he kind of gave us a lot more consistency. 4 tackles, 3, and then we get up to like 6, 9, 7. Like he's pretty consistent overall. And he's also a guy who actually, even believe it or not, we don't like to say that we can rely on interceptions, but 8 interceptions, 3 interceptions. He only played 9 games in 2022, no interceptions. 5 interceptions in 2021. A guy who has set a floor of about 3 interceptions for himself with healthy seasons beyond his rookie season. So a guy who's going to get in on pass breakups, regularly be involved in plays on the defensive side of the ball. I like Xavier McKinney as one of your top safeties as one of the top handful of safeties off the board. Again, a guy pass deflection kind of guy, interception. He's even developed that interception floor. and a nice tackling floor as well. Just a great high-end floor player for a safety. So I don't like to go out and get a whole lot of safeties early in drafts, but if Xavier McKinney falls to me in like the 8th or 9th round, I'd take a shot on him. And I've been adding him to my roster all offseason at that value because he's not going up there with your Brian Branches and whatnot, but he's also going to get a nice, healthy tackle floor like guys like that. He just may not quite put up overall the kind of flashy stats that everybody else puts up in terms of Kyle Hamilton, Brian Branch, and guys like that. But he's respectable. He's up there. Last year he was really competing for those kind of numbers. So I do like Xavier McKinney this year. I hope he can bring those tackles up to maybe more of like 100 or so, 100 plus where he was in 2023. But definitely kind of a good value, good guy who I think you can kind of place as your anchor defensive back this season. I'm not going to go out and absolutely just overpay to get him or acquire him. More of a guy that I just kind of target in drafts. I'm not a proponent of buying defensive backs in dynasty leagues unless you absolutely need it and you can afford it. Say you're really deep at linebacker, go put a couple of middling linebackers out there and see if you can get a Xavier McKinney in return. If you need some defensive back help, I think he's somebody you can put in there and you can feel pretty good about having him as your top guy. But if we go outside of Xavier McKinney, we're looking at Evan Williams, free safety, and not particularly excited about free safety position. Keyshawn Nixon, a guy who's had some decent luck in the NFL. And he actually, if your league rewards return yards, Keyshawn Nixon is a guy who does get return yards, but not really an overly flashy guy. He does have a decent tackling floor here where we see him get about 80 or more tackles in the last couple of seasons. I know he gets in on some pass deflections. Let's just look at his week-to-week performances. Yeah, he does have the upside. 7 tackles and a sack. If he's going to rush the passer, it seems like he gets more sacks. Sometimes they'll play him around the line of scrimmage, but he doesn't quite have the consistent role around the line of scrimmage. So the games where they do want to put more pressure on the quarterback, Keyshawn Nixon is going to have a good game. But if he's dropping back in coverage, for the most part, he's kind of a ho-hum 3, 4, 5 tackle kind of guy with the upside for 6 or 7. And then whenever he's playing around the line of scrimmage, that's when he has his best games. 10 tackles, 7 tackles and a sack. 7 tackles and a sack. When he gets sacks around the line of scrimmage, he's playing around the line of scrimmage, he tends to do better. But again, it's just kind of taking shots on what week. So go follow Johnny the Greek on Twitter. He's a guy who puts out DB streaming articles. He's got a 70% hit rate over the last handful of seasons. As long as he's done it, go check him out. Definitely a guy who I would be following if you are into streaming defensive backs, because that's kind of how I treat the position. Is just go find some pass happy matchups and find the lesser or the worst cornerback and put them on your team. Play them for the week because teams are going to target opposite the primary cornerback, where if you have like a Sauce Gardner on one side, definitely go get some Tony Adams or something like that. So just a guy who I think is going to be targeted in pass happy matchups. If they're going to be playing in a run heavy matchup, I'm not going to be playing him on my team. So there's just too many other guys in the defensive back landscape that can put up the kind of numbers we want to see. So then we've also got Javon Bullard, a guy, let's just see, did we look at some of his stats? I talked about him briefly. 85 tackles in his rookie season is pretty good. That's a nice floor coming into the league. I think even in playing as the nickel corner, playing around the line of scrimmage is very encouraging. We just kind of want to see him put more on the field. We want to see him get some sacks, get some big plays, interceptions, pass deflections, and things like that. Not that he didn't. I'm sure he did. I can't quite see no interceptions last year, but I'm sure he got his hands on some pass breakups. But I just want to see a little bit more from Javon Bullard. We saw an encouraging rookie season. He's in the right role, playing around the line of scrimmage. So definitely a guy with some upside. You probably won't have to pay a whole lot for him in season-long leagues. If you need somebody later on in your drafts, I've been able to get him in the teens or so in all IDP drafts. So don't feel like you need to go out and get him in the earlier rounds if you want to take a shot on a guy like Javon Bullard. But definitely already put up solid and respectable floor play numbers here, as you can see, with 85 tackles and 1 fumble recovery from a year ago. Even look at his week-to-week upsides: 11 tackles, 7 tackles. Solid floor for a first-year player, especially not even having played a full game. If he would have played 2 more games, we could be looking at 100 tackles in his rookie season. So definitely some upside in Javon Bullard. I think he could be a decent value in your fantasy drafts for this season. So, that's going to wrap up the show for today. There's your Green Bay Packers. If you have any other questions, you want me to dive in more to some other guys that you might have on your team, because I know I didn't go into a whole lot of detail, and the defensive line's pretty ugly there, but there's other guys on this team that maybe I could go into some more detail with you guys. If you like what you see, throw a like down, comment, subscribe, turn on the notification bell so you catch the future episodes where I'm jumping into the rest of this division in the NFL, get through as many teams as I can. So if you've hung out this long, thank you for watching. I appreciate your support. Show some love in the comments if you like what you see. If there's something you want to see that I don't have in here, go ahead and throw that in there too. I'm always looking for suggestions. I want to improve and provide you guys the best kind of content that I can and the kind of information that you're looking for. So if there's something you're looking for, let me know. Definitely, I'll look to kind of get in here and talk about information if it's something that everybody could use. Otherwise, I can lend my thoughts on a personal level. Feel free to comment. So thanks everybody for watching again. Go check out the IDP Plus website, consider a subscription, and get all of that subscriber-only content and tools and information. Go check out idpplus.com. So, until next time, we will see you for another edition of the IDP Plus podcast. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for watching the IDP Plus YouTube network. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Be sure to tap the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload new content.